Narrative pedagogy involves teaching and learning through storytelling. The approach reflects constructivist learning theory. Students develop knowledge, understanding, and new interpretations through the experience of storytelling. In the home economics classroom, learners can construct narratives or stories about climate change or social justice issues using the medium of textiles and stitches. Narrative pedagogy provides an opportunity for the explanation of stories and understanding of our lived experiences as persons. The process of storytelling involves reflection. We gain a more critical perspective of our life, actions, and ways of being in the world. The home economics classroom becomes a safe space for both the teacher and learner to consider the ethical decisions that the individual encounters in their everyday life. The teacher listens with respect and looks beyond the stories to help the students understand their experiences more deeply. The teacher's role is to understand students' existing conceptions and beliefs, address them, and build on them. A teacher can expose the dominant forces that shape how narratives are constructed by asking good questions and listening deeply.
This whole project was wrapped around the narrative teaching strategy because they had to show a picture, they had to narrate what their feelings and thoughts were through the whole project. So that was key. And then sustainability was very much part of that. Allowing them then to sit beside each other and talk and converse with each other and throw out their own ideas and hear back from their own peers. They had a part in the portfolio where they actually had to go around each other and look for feedback. And then they took that feedback on board. Sometimes they changed their design, sometimes they didn't. I encouraged them to be very honest and open with each other, and none of this placating each other and telling each other, oh, it's all wonderful. I wanted them to be honest with each other, and they were very honest. So in the beginning, I introduced them to all of the sustainable goals because I wanted them to have the freedom to pick what was important to them and not to be forcing an idea on them. So they had a whole week where they talked about those and discussed them together, and then they narrowed it down to one that they were going to use for their own project. They already had some ideas for design, so they were kind of linking that to their sustainable goal as well. And then they took that further when they made the mood board. This gave them plenty of time to talk to each other about what they were going to do, what colours they were going to use, how they were going to bring across the theme to somebody else looking at it, not just themselves. They had to think about the person that was going to be viewing it. And when they did make the mood boards, they actually went around and they decided what kind of mood was coming off each mood board. So they had to critique each other the whole way along. So I think that was very important because it was part of their story. And somebody did say to me afterwards, when they look back on this, it was a whole story from the beginning to the end.
Sustainability content knowledge, understanding, values and skills can be effectively developed in the home economics classroom using narrative pedagogy. The Sustainable Development Goals provide a useful lens through which to look at the most pressing global challenges. Home economics content addresses many of the goals. When planning, teachers can work out what subject content relates to the goals and make small changes to increase that focus. As illustrated in this case study and example, the students chose one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to research. Using the design process, the students generated narratives and creative textile responses to reflect their views about the selected global goal. In this example, the students were keen to learn about sustainability issues.
I did 3 houses to represent no poverty because everybody deserves a nice warm house, and it means a lot to me.
I chose my rowing club crest because it represents the club and it links to good health and well-being. When I go out in the lake, it rests my mind and gives good exercise.
My design is a very colourful bookshelf with lots of flowers and plants around it, because I did this to represent how important it is that everyone gets a proper education, because around different parts of the world some people and children do not get a proper education.
I did the beach to represent cleaning up the beaches and keeping them clean, because if you don't clean the beaches, it'll go into the water and it'll pollute and kill animals underneath the water, and I also live beside the beach, so it meant a lot to me.
I done my design on a seahorse with fish swimming by it and a starfish. And this represents life below water because the seahorses are all marine life and it's important to keep them protected.
I did life below water for my sustainable development goal, and I did a big ocean and turtles going into it because the animals deserve a safe home to go into like we do.
Well, I made a butterfly and flowers. They kind of just remind me of spring and the nice gardens my granny has. And flowers are really important for the ecosystem and for the pollen for the bees.
During the Creative Textiles unit of learning, the teacher used several teaching strategies such as questioning, dialogic teaching and learning, the design process, and the issue tree strategy. The teacher will now share with you how some of these strategies were used. Additionally, the teacher and students explain how the project supported learning and key skill development.
I did use a lot of questioning, but it was focused questioning, so I had thought about the question beforehand so that they weren't just thrown at them. They had something that they had to think about. And I gave them time to think about it and come back to me with their ideas. And I tried to contextualize them as well. So, for example, I said to them before COVID that people were wearing masks in some parts of the world. Did you know that? Where were they doing it? Why were they doing it? And they linked that to pollution. And then they realized that, that pollution is something that's important to everybody and that the pandemic might have been bad, but we're also causing problems that are just as bad for people in other parts of the world. And they had those conversations amongst themselves. So the systems thinking model in home economics influenced my teaching in this because we started off with an issue. And it's very much like the perennial problems that we meet all the time in home economics. And then they had to go away and think about that. And that's where the issue tree came in very handy because we were able to link that to an issue and then work through the problem and then see what solutions could have been brought to that problem and work through them. And it gave them a chance to develop their own understanding and their own thinking and their own problem solving skills. Each one of the parts of the tree has their particular goal that they had already chosen. And then they looked at how they would solve it and why it was important to them. Mostly why it was important to them because I really wanted to get that across first. What was the point in doing the whole thing? Why would we do this? And they all wrote out their little leaves and put it on the tree and it became theirs. They took ownership of their own goal and they were focused in on their own goal. And I think it was a great way to focus the students in on what they were actually doing.
Whenever I was doing this project, I was really able to link it with quality education because that's a really important goal that we need to complete.
When I was doing my project, I realised the importance on how to keep our oceans clean so that the creatures can stay alive and not die.
When I was doing my project, I learned how important each of the goals were in their own way and how the different ones interact with different things.
When I was doing my project, I learned all about sustainability and how to reuse and recycle materials. I also learned some new stitches that I didn't know.
When I was doing my project, I learned all about sustainability goals and what they meant and how they actually helped the environment.
It's important to me because it means that the environment will be saved, and I feel like without the environment and all the flowers, the world would be a lot darker and a little more sad.
I was sustainable by reusing the fabrics, and we did it in the front and the back, and we also used the bamboo hooks, which are also sustainable.
What I learned for this project was how to sew and all the different stitches and how to manage your time.
When I was doing my project, I learned the different types of stitches and how to use the sewing machine, and I found it far easier to do it because we were able to talk to our friends and listen to music.
When I was doing my project, I learned all about the sustainable goals and we really went into detail about them. I also learned about all the new threads and I learned how to do a French knot.
If you have younger brothers or sisters or cousins or younger siblings at home and they're falling and that they fall outside and they rip their trousers, or even older people as well, that you don't have to throw them out straight away. You can stitch up the hole, use different types of stitches and fix it up and it's brand new again, so you don't have to throw it out and buy a new pair of clothes, and you're not wasting money. You're not wasting money on buying new clothes.
When I was doing my project, I learned how to be creative and how to design different stuff, and how there's so many different ways to portray like the sustainable goal, life below water.
We could all have an opinion in our class, and we all really enjoyed it because it was really relaxing and enjoying, and I feel like she made it way better by letting us express like what we felt about the Sustainable Development Goals.
The key skills were a great thing to bring in because they had the key skills from the CBA in front of them. A lot of them had ticked them off as they went along, so that I kept asking them things like, so have you been creative today? How have you been creative today? Did you work with somebody? Have you used these skills? You know, have you worked together? Have you used technology? And they were going along quite happily, ticking off all the boxes because they could see how they were using the key skills, and it was important for them to see that they were. And I think the whole thing overall has been great for communication skills. The key skills themselves, the literacy, the numeracy even in how many stitches I'm going to do, the literacy, you know, around the whole sustainability and being able to read about it, to be able to find new words, you know, pollution and sustainability, and even being able to link well-being and how did that link into the whole thing, being able to think outside the box for themselves. So then I was able to lead them to where they could find the knowledge for themselves, and I encouraged them to research it themselves in groups, so kind of like a jigsaw, and they came back together. So even though one group was doing life on land and another one was doing life below water, they were able to share the information with each other and see where it linked between the two things. So their knowledge and their understanding developed in that way. So they had the communication skills and even their whole project, the skill of being able to portray their feelings and their attitudes towards it, and that it was important to them. It was important enough to sit down and take the time to make their pictures in textiles. So I think that their skills developed in that way, as well as that they developed in being able to be reflective on their own work and being able to think about things, think things through, look at it from a different perspective, look at somebody else's point of view. They became mature in their attitude towards what was happening to other people in the world and how lucky they had, and how lucky they have it, or they feel that they have it. And they could see the difference between what they have and what other people don't have. Allowing them to speak to each other and not be, you know, to have an open classroom. The noise in the classroom never got loud because they were talking quietly to each other about what they were doing, how they were doing it, and they loved coming into this classroom. I loved to see them coming into this classroom, and I hated to see them going out of the classroom. They have the knowledge, they're spreading the knowledge, and they're proud that they know this. You know, they're confident in themselves, and I think this is great that it's going across subjects and it's going outside the classroom. I think they will have good attitudes going forward, so their habits will be good. We have talked about clothing and labelling and buying online, which would be a big thing for these young people. So really, I think they will think about it. But I've already heard them saying the smaller brands, and I've heard them mention bigger brands as no-nos. So I do think they're clued in, and they'll be good going forward.